Jim Collison, again, we're live from Infotec 2017 here with Dustin Tower, and Dustin's a veteran at this. Although, first of all, Dustin, welcome.
Thank you for having me again.
You've done a variety of things in the years that you've been here and doing that. Let's talk a little bit about your session. I think it's coming up, right?
Yeah, 2:15 today. I'm doing a kind of a walkthrough of the Chrome browser developer tools. So kind of every single browser has a set of tools underneath the hood that are available to everyone. So when you're trying to kind of debug your website, whether it's the look of it or you're trying to performance test it and see what's slowing down the loading, all that tooling is built right into the browser, and you just have to pop it open and run a couple of profiles, and you're good to go.
Cool. Let's pay the bills. Where are you from? What do you do? Who do you work for? Those kinds of things. Let's get that out of the way.
From St. Paul, Minnesota. I work for Easel Solutions. I've been there for about 11 years now. We are kind of traditionally an Adobe training partner, so we kind of train over the years over all the products Adobe has, from the Creative Cloud, a lot of the Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, the Dreamweaver, the used to be Flash, now Adobe Animate.
Yeah.
So a lot of those kind of desktop tools. We also do a lot of e-learning development, web development. So we kind of have the training side, kind of have the consulting side for our clients that don't have time to learn and just want us to do it for them. And then mixed in with that are obviously conferences and a lot of, I probably present at 4 or 5 conferences a year, give or take. So it's a good kind of mixture of, in my office, just learning new technologies, teaching people those technologies, and going out and talking about them.
Yeah, no, and I've known you. It seems like you come to each one of these conferences with a little bit of a different twist. You're talking about Chrome browser and this. What's the state of the browser today when you think about Microsoft is coming on with Edge? We're deprecating for the most part. Is that the right word? We're deprecating.
Deprecating is a good way to put.
For the most part. And Firefox has seemed to be there, but then it makes these ebbs and flows. So what's in your mind when we think about the browser? Are we in good shape today?
Yeah, I think it's probably the most exciting time for being a web developer, because we're finally at a state where the browser competition is so good that they not only are competing against each other to kind of be the best browser, but they're also actually helping each other out a lot by participating in what are the standards that are we developing toward. What should a browser be able to do, and let's agree on a common way to implement that. We're back in the like early 2000s and mid 2000s. It was always, if you did any kind of web development that didn't involve Flash, where you had kind of a unified player, it was, okay, if they're in Internet Explorer, you got to have this code. If they were in Firefox, you had to have this code. And it was really difficult to be a web developer because you had to account for all these user scenarios. And nowadays, the browsers are very, very similar in what they implement and what they allow. And you're more focused on just using the latest technologies and being able to, kind of have a lot of fun with those technologies.
Yeah. Has HTML5 made a difference in that space?
It absolutely has, in the sense that it has created a standard. It's created this is what the web is, and the browsers now conform to that standard versus trying to implement their own sort of cases. And a great example is layout on the web, like trying to get things positioned where you want them to go, has just always been the bane of any web designers. And there's a brand new CSS feature called CSS Grid, which allows you to do layout in a really intuitive, really simple way. Well, that feature just came out like 2 weeks ago, and literally 4 of the browser vendors all support it now natively in the latest version. So just the fact that like a new feature could be finalized and released, and the browsers support it that fast and in that level of consistency, really, really great for developers.
You mentioned Flash, and I'm I don't live in the browser world, and I hear bad things about Flash, but yet it still lives on.
It's like just hanging on with dear life and keeping it. I mean, Flash was really our bridge through the 2000s. It enabled developers to do a lot of really, really cool things during the time when we didn't have a lot of uniformity on the web, when we needed kind of a common player, a common language to be able to deliver content. As obviously mobile devices came out, that kind of created the beginning of the end with Flash, you know, the famous Steve Jobs open letter to Flash. And so that it really has gone away in the sense it's not a medium that it's like me trying to speak in a language that I created myself to people and being like, why can't anyone understand me? It's my language. You know, it's like, well, no, nowadays we want to have a common language where we can all speak, whether you're on mobile or desktop, or HoloLens or refrigerator, wherever, you know, you have code running. We want to be able, and the web has really enabled that. So the places where Flash is still surviving is kind of sometimes in the video and media realm, because video players on some platforms still need it. But that's not really the case anymore. So you shouldn't be using it if you are using it nowadays. It's kind of the
why do
takeaway.
people still use it? What are some situations where, because it does seem like it's barely hanging on?
I would say the number one reason people are using it is because they don't have either the desire to re-implement whatever has been implemented. I mean, there are some very complicated things made in Flash, and so if you don't have a user base that wants to view things on mobile devices, then you can stick with Flash and be safe. But I mean, browsers are blocking Flash now. In Chrome, you got to click to enable it. You know, it's not even shipping with some browsers anymore. So you have to have a very unique user base in order to be able to use it. Otherwise, I mean, you're just, you know, people are just not able to see your content.
Yeah, the last two guests we've had on have both come at it from or have worked with AIs when we think of the Amazon devices, or we didn't specifically talk about this, but Microsoft's Cortana, Google Home. When you think about web development, and we're moving, it appears we're moving to a more vocal world as opposed to a visual world. That'll still exist. Any thoughts you do a lot of web stuff? Any thoughts do you have to do web development any different, knowing that it may get scraped and get served up via audio?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's a really important point, because I mean, not only is it the cool and sexy technology of like being on your couch and like yelling out like, hey, Cortana, look this thing up for me, or do this for me, you know, but it's also from the accessibility standpoint of being able to have your content you're creating on your web be consumed by, you know, people with a visual or audio or like hearing impairment, and or color blindness, all of the things that can be barriers to content and being able to consume that content. If our websites that we're creating can be read by machines and vocalized that way, that's a really great way to make it accessible to people who wouldn't otherwise be able to consume it that way. And so accessibility has always been a big thing on the web, and over the years, some people have made better efforts to make their content accessible, some not really, because it's, you know, behind some sort of, you know, it's a big, huge, complicated system where you can't really navigate it without a mouse or without, you know, using, you know, your vision to be able to see what you're doing. So that fact that our content can be scraped up through artificial intelligence or screen readers or any other, you know, truly assistive device is a great way to be able to deliver that content.
Yeah, I feel a little bit like this world, and I'll call it AI. I know it's not, but let's just call it AI
for simplicity's sake. Yeah.
It feels a little bit like the mid '90s when I would access the internet through AOL or through CompuServe, right? And today we just go right to the internet. We don't even think about it. I feel like in the world of AI, there's certain things they work really well with, and then other things they just fall apart. All of them, and I think of the Echo, doesn't do a great job. Its search is terrible. Google fixes that a little bit, but it has trouble with other things.
The integrations with, e-commerce and stuff.
Cortana is awesome with productivity and knowing your email and some of those kinds of things, and scheduling and mapping and stuff like that. Do you think when we think about, you know, they can all find things on Wikipedia, but that seems to be about it.
Yeah.
Are there other things that we could be doing from a web development perspective that would make it easier for these things when they hit the page? Do you think that has to come?
Yeah, well, I think that's a lot of the, what I was talking earlier about how we're developing towards standards now, as opposed to just like, I want to use like this technology and I don't care where it works, or, you know, whatever, you know, our mentality has shifted in how we create things. And so, you know, there are standardized ways that you can, like metadata you can add into your page to create that sort of structure. And a very concise example is the way, when you tweet out a link, sometimes that link you tweeted shows a really nice picture, a little headline, maybe like a 4 or 5 word blurb. Other times it just shows like a link or maybe like a wrong picture, because Twitter's trying to pick up on what the content is, right? Well, you can put that metadata onto your article. So when you post on Facebook, when you tweet it out, the engine where it's going through knows, okay, this is the summary, this is the title, this is kind of the featured image I should use, to kind of sell the content. And AI can be picking up on that too. They can utilize those things that are already there to be able to get that high level summary of what the content is, if this is appropriate for what the user wants. And so I think there's, with any kind of new technology, there's always that awkward period of like, why would I want this? Like I remember like back in, 2000 when my cell phone got a camera on it, and it was like the worst camera ever, right? Just horrible. And my cell phone, like it had terrible battery life and reception. I'm like, why would I don't want a phone in my, or a camera in my phone, like work on making the reception better, blah, 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 blah. And then flash forward years later, I can't like live without having a camera that I can take pictures of things like all the time, right? Yeah. So we have that sort of like awkward, like figure out where this technology fits into our daily life. And then all of a sudden we can't imagine life without it.
I think there's going to need to be more when we think of crawlers, especially AI coming in. I think there's going to need to be more clues as to what that is, because we have some amazing ability to ask questions and not only ask questions, but give options. So, when somebody lands on my podcast page, I would like it to be able to say, be able to pick up my menu items and say, would you like to read this? Or would you like me to read this to you? Would you like to listen to this podcast? Would you like to? So I'd love to see some of that more functionality. Do you think, are there some processes there yet doing that, or do you think we're still a ways away from that?
And that really is, I think, on the AI developers or those the companies creating those models to tap into the accessibility features that are on the web, because really what you want is the same thing you would want someone with a visual impairment using a screen reader to do when they hit your page, right? When they hit your page, you don't want them to have to like navigate through a bunch of like random content before getting to the menu, because like you want them to be able to get to that search button or whatever really fast to be able to find what they're looking for. So being able to use arias and roles and alt text on images and things to be able to like describe to that device what this is and if this is important or not for them to read to the user, or if this is something really not important right away and we want them to get to that menu first and then read, even though the menu says like search. Well, if it's an assistive device or AI device, we don't want it just to say search. We want it to say search for the latest articles and podcasts, or you want it to see something that wouldn't look good visually because it's too long for a menu, but sounds great to someone who can't see what it is.
Yeah, Facebook has done a lot with their developer API to tell you how your page is going to be exposed to them. I'd love to see that on the same AI side. So for Google Home, for Cortana, for Amazon Echo.
And I think it's a no-brainer for them to not only provide those kind of tools to be able to see like, okay, if someone is searching on this, this is what they're going to get, but also kind of like tie those in with what we already have, like what Facebook and Twitter and what we do on the web right now, because that technology is there from our standpoint. We just want those other tools to be able to tap into it and know what they want to see, so we can add it to our pages.
My wife just got a new 2016 Subaru Outback, and it's got eyesight on it.
Oh, really?
And it does things like tell you if you're getting out of the lane, or if a car in front of you brakes, it will do an assistive brake for you. But I am dying to see what it sees. Like I want to hack into that. There should be, it's got a big camera, on there. I'd love it if they had a eyesight, what it's seeing.
Yeah, like sort of like a visualization of like all the things.
What is it doing?
Yeah.
Like I'm sure there's all kinds of things that are happening. I'd love the same thing when we think about AI. So here's my site. Now, if I play it against
what does it look, what does it sound like on this, or what is this device seeing? Yeah. And that's, you know, and again, like that isn't anything that like really should be too complicated for them to, you know, provide as tooling, because that's the same thing we do with accessibility tools. Like, what does my site look like, you know, on the JAWS screen reader, you know, or how does the JAWS screen reader interpret it? So
interesting.
Yeah.
What are you hoping in your session today? What are you hoping people, what's the one or two things? How much time do we get in these?
It's a 45-minute session.
45?
So yeah, this is just, you know, the classic, you know, regular session.
I should have done my prep.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking like I have the same amount of time.
Yeah.
I should probably think through what I'm going to say. But what are you hoping the one or two things people walk away with?
I mean, the main thing is just understanding what tools are there for them, because, you know, the browser developer tools have been there for a long time. And when I'm teaching, you know, whether it's an intro to web development class or even like a more advanced topics class, not only will people who have been doing web development learn new things, like, wow, like I'll have people who are like, I didn't know that was there, but I'll see somebody using it and there's a feature that I didn't even realize was in there, you know, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. How long has that been in there? Oh, for like 3 years, you know, like, oh. And what's cool about these tools is that they're not anything you have to download and have installed or like ask IT to get. They're just in the browser, and they're kind of, every single browser has them. Some are better than others. Like I really like the Chrome developer tools. Firefox has some really nice ones. Edge has a great set of tools as well, and they'll each individually maybe have a feature that is better for a certain situation. And so it's kind of like just getting your hands dirty in the browser to help you more quickly identify like whatever the bug you're trying to solve, you know, why this image has a bunch of white space on one side of it and it won't go up against the edge, you know, just all the little things that we would struggle over the years that are laid out for us just in the browser. So it really speeds up your workflow, and you don't have to fully use them. You can just use one little piece of them, but they're just there for you to use. So AIM puts a big emphasis on this conference on learning, and it's free for college students, which is awesome. High school and college students. If you were talking to a brand new web developer, you know, somebody's in high school and they just decide, you know, I want to do this web development thing and I want to kind of get into this, what would you tell them? Like, what are a couple steps they could take to start? What should they be doing to start getting in this ecosystem? Yeah, like the number one thing is just do something. You know, I think like the really great thing about nowadays is it's a really exciting time to be a web developer, because there is so much technology you can take advantage of. There's so many places you can have your content live. Like I said, like HoloLens, like there's a whole API for you to basically use web technologies to create your virtual environments, you know, or to like, you know, manipulate those virtual environments. So it's a great time for that. The problem is there are so many tools out there. It's sometimes a little paralyzing on where do I start, because it isn't like a traditional, like, oh, you want to go into video, get your hands on a copy of Premiere. Like, if you understand Premiere start to finish, like, you're going to be solid. Like, that's a great, you know, that's a great editor to use, you know, or you can just kind of like pick a tool and just kind of like learn that. Whereas on the web, you read one blog and they're like, okay, yeah, just, you know, use Node, install these packages, and then just config, you know, this, do this. Another person's like, oh, use React, use Angular. There's just all these different directions you can go that can sometimes, again, be paralyzing. And if you're starting out, the main thing, I mean, understanding HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Those are the three technologies that are the paramount technologies on the web. And find a website that you like, try to recreate it. You know, just try to copy it and do it from scratch. You know, have a brother or sister or uncle who needs a site for it. You know, just build something. Just start getting your hands dirty with it, because just reading articles and watching videos and stuff, it doesn't get you using it. And I learn best when I'm actually doing something, when I'm actually moving forward versus trying to decide. So, you know, that's what I always tell people is just start building something. Find a site that you like, or a tutorial, take the files, start messing with the code, see what happens. Yeah. Because, you know, the more you do, the more you start to get those preferences for what you like, what you don't like, and you can start making decisions on the technologies that you want to use. You mentioned HoloLens. You've actually mentioned it twice since I've been interviewing. No, yeah, it's because it's such a cool thing. No, right on. AR,
VR. Now I think we're calling it mixed reality.
Yeah, yep.
I think we've fallen. I think
virtual reality is like so like 1990. Like, you know, it doesn't. It's like not really like, it's like we're actually beyond that now.
Well, and it was always you would talk about these two technologies, and you would end up explaining them to people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody just got sick of that. Like, hey, let's just call this mixed reality.
Yeah.
Right? And we'll if we need to know more.
Yeah.
When you think about this mixed reality environment that's coming, and you think of web development, right? I mean, users are seeing through to or interacting with the web, much like the AI devices that we weren't titled correctly when we first started, but AI, we called them AI. When you think about mixed reality as a web developer, are there places for web developers in this world?
Well, you know, what's funny is, like, I mean, on the surface, absolutely, because, you know, I can only imagine somebody like being like, hey, you know what, like nowadays it's like, I can't look at your site on my mobile phone. It's kind of broken, right? And you know, now someone will come up to you and be like, so I was in this HoloLens environment and your site was projected on a wall at an angle and I couldn't read it. So could you debug that for me? And, you know, like so we have to like consider our content being, you know, but more, you know, uniformly. I mean, the web is kind of the basis for everything now, right? Like we just can't imagine really doing anything without being able to quick Google it, or, you know, upload a file, you know, send a file to someone through, you know, through a service. You know, we have all these things online. I think what's great about the web platform is, you know, it's here to stay. It's not a fad, right? So if we're building our content in a way that it's, you know, accessible and able to be consumed across devices that we're used to, adapting them to environments that we might not be from, you know, that are new, that are a mixed reality environment, will be easier, because we're in this sort of like the content is king era. Let's make sure our users can get to that content and not let our technology be the barrier. Like a website with lots of images that takes 5, 6, 7 seconds to download on a fast Wi-Fi connection, where on a 3G or 2G connection might take a minute or two. Like, we can't have that. We need our users to get our content. And so that's where the flexibility that we're building our content right now should make it more adaptable to those mixed reality environments.
Yeah, you mentioned time, and that'll be even more interesting when we live in, you know, when it's on the screen and I type it and it takes a second for it to come up, I'm kind of patient. Will that change and be even more critical in this mixed reality?
I think it is right now. And there's kind of like this buzzword, or this little buzz phrase right now. Like, we have like WWW, the World Wide Web, right? But oftentimes, especially us in more developed countries with better technologies, tend to think of it as like the wealthy Western web, right? Because I pull up my phone on my LTE connection and like the site loads great, right? Well, but you don't realize that even a connection that's half that fast, it might take 3 or 4 seconds even before someone sees anything. And our attention spans are not there today. So, and even that bandwidth costs money. There's a website that's great called whatdoesmysitecost.com, and it piggybacks on webpagetest.org, which is kind of like a great benchmark tool for just testing your performance of your website. But whatdoesmywebsitecost.com, you put in your URL, and it literally tells you how much it would cost someone to view your site. So, for example, like the Infotec site, I think in the US it's 17 cents. So the way they're calculating that is they're looking at like, okay, well, what does a data plan cost? So you get 2 gigs per month. Well, you can break that down based on, what you pay per month for those 2 gigs. So it's a little, tongue in cheek, and that, but when you look at like that compared to like maybe a connection in, Central Africa or somewhere in, India that maybe doesn't have as much access to, high-speed internet, or they're on feature phones, and phones are their main tool for accessing, costing a dollar or two, in our money to access a site. Can you imagine like every site you're going to costing you like $1 or $2? Like that is crazy to think about.
Yeah. And you might surf differently if you knew that. Like if it said, hey, it's going to cost you $2.
That site does not load fast. You're not going to use that site.
Yeah.
And we all know it. You get that message from, Verizon or whoever that like you're almost out of data, you're going to go over your data limit. And we kind of, shrug that off.
I know.
In some cases, but that adds up. And if your data plan is like you cannot go over, or you're limited, because like you have so little data because you can't afford it, you make some big choices on the kind of content you access.
That's interesting because Cox Communications here in Nebraska just went tiered, and metered, and they'd been threatening this for a while, and then finally they implemented it. And I think everybody in Nebraska is maybe on their second. There were two mulligans.
Sure,
like, hey, we'll give you 2
months. But we're serious this time.
And so I've been thinking, like, I binge watched a bunch of video off Netflix this weekend.
Yeah.
And I started thinking, I better check.
I wonder what that cost me.
Kind of damage I did to my
and that's a big, like I said, it ends up like I do make like strategic decisions about, like, I know I'm on Wi-Fi, so I can use my content that way, or I can access content when I'm on Wi-Fi. I'm safer doing that than I am just out in the world on LTE, using my phone's data plan. But and that, I think that begins to really sift through. If you're in a high competitive market and your site is a chunky, slow site, people are going to go to the alternative because they recognize that. They know every time they go to that site, it's faster.
It's going to go fast. Ironically, so on Cox now, anything over your terabyte is sold at $10 per 10 gig.
Yeah.
And then on my phone, I just got a 10 gig hotspot for the month.
Sure.
So if I get close,
you have like your strategic plan, right? Okay, so when I get to this, I turn the hotspot. I'm going to use that until I get to this point. Then I'm going to roll back over and use the overages there because that's cheaper than the hotspot overages.
Roll into the hotspot, honey. We're rolling to the hotspot. And she has 10.
We are a hotspot only situation right now. Code hotspot.
Well, she has 10, and I have 10, and my daughter has 10. So we're good. We got 30 gig.
Yeah. You can borrow each other's, like data too, right? Your daughter could be like, Dad, I got like 5 gig left, so up that for a few bucks here.
I know. Isn't that crazy that we think that? Well, Dustin, thanks for jumping in here. It's always great to have you.
This was fun.
Join us here.
I'm planning on HDC this year, assuming I get in. I get allowed in. So
they keep inviting you back. And they keep inviting us back, which is a good sign. So if you're watching live, and there's a few of you that are watching live, we're going to mute the mics for a second. We'll have the next guest up here in just a few minutes. Dustin, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
You bet.